Before we talk gear, let's talk safety. Whether you're in the backcountry for a multi-day adventure or just a day hike, there's one piece of gear that should never be optional, and that's an emergency communication device. When you step off the pavement, quite often your phone becomes dead weight. And that's when a satellite messenger like this Garmin InReach Mini 2 becomes your absolute lifeline. It's the difference between being found in hours or being found in days. It's that ultimate safety net for solo hikers, giving you and your family peace of mind. It's also the one critical tool you're going to need to communicate with your wife if you plan on being out for a few more hours than you originally agreed on. Sorry, hon. This is my Garmin InReach Mini 2. It is an absolute non-negotiable. It has to be with me on any one of my backcountry trips. It is a literal lifeline if something goes wrong. But on my last outing, I learned a really tough lesson the hard way about its battery life and its limitations. Because like any tool, if you don't use it properly, you're going to find it's going to leave you up short, and you don't want to run into a dangerous situation that you're not prepared for. When I left on my trip, this was sitting at 100% charge, as it always is. I charge it into my truck as I drive up to the trailhead to ensure that the battery's charged and ready to go. Within 24 hours, the battery was down to 12%. So what happened? Why did my reliable safety device go from hero to almost zero in one day? And the answer, my friends, unfortunately is pretty simple, but it's crucial. It wasn't just user error, it was also a signal struggle that had a huge impact on the battery life. And I'm going to go into deep detail on this, that way you don't find yourselves in a similar situation. Let's break down the two crucial things that massively impacted the life of my battery. And that first one is the digital handshake. Now what I mean by that is I had my Mini paired to my iPhone just for ease of use. I use the texting app that Garmin gives, and it is fantastic. It's really easy to send and receive messages. Great way to communicate between your Garmin and whoever you're texting without having to try and see on this tiny little screen. Because if you're like me, your eyes might not be what they used to be. But that digital handshake is an absolute killer if you're not using it properly. Here's the problem. When it's constantly synced, your communicator is always in a perpetual state of checking and communicating. It's always looking for updated information. It's always monitoring that Bluetooth connection and always listening for messages coming from your iPhone. Think of it like this. Every time you unlock your phone, your Mini is also waking up. And that's a constant digital handshake. And it's silent, but it's absolutely significant when it comes to power drain. Now the second and arguably biggest effect on the battery draw was poor signal strength and poor communication timing. Now, what I mean by that is, in the course of that 24-hour hike, I sent 9 messages to my wife. And these were customized messages that I typed out telling her about the trip, where I was at, and what I was seeing. Unfortunately, some of these messages took upwards of 20 minutes to finally process and send out. That means for 20 minutes, my Garmin InReach Mini 2 was at full capacity trying and failing multiple times to send a message. So think of it like this. For that 3 hours in a 24-hour period, the Garmin was at full throttle with a ping, fail, until it could finally get a message out. And that is just an absolute killer when it comes to the battery draw. Now, let's talk about these manufacturer specs for a minute, because they are real. So a quick check on the Garmin site. Okay, quick interruption here, folks. When I first made this video, I said that the Garmin InReach Mini 2 tells you can expect up to 90 hours of battery life. Well, Garmin has actually updated their website, and now what they're telling you is that you can expect up to 14 days of battery life in optimum conditions, and up to 4 days of battery life if you have moderate tree coverage. That's a significant difference, and I thought it was worth noting. It says up to 90 hours at 10 minutes tracking with standard messaging, logging, and up to 14 days in power save mode. Right, now these are legitimate specs, but they rely on some very specific conditions. One, you need to have a clear view of sight for the sky so that you can improve your chances of a message getting out. It also relies on using standardized messaging, not the custom messaging that I was doing, or linking to a smartphone. What I've learned is that anytime you introduce any kind of an obstacle, battery life is significantly reduced. Now, there are some simple things that we can do to help extend our battery life, and we're going to get into that next. So what's the solution? How do we use this essential tool safely without it dying on us when we need it the most? Well, that comes down to strategic conservation. Step number one, you're going to ensure that the Bluetooth connection between your cell phone and your InReach Mini is disabled. Unless I'm sending a long customized message, I don't really need that messenger app, and it really is just a draw on my battery life. So I'm going to make sure that I'm disabling the Bluetooth communication with the Mini, and I'm making sure that my cell phone Bluetooth is also shut off. That's going to increase the battery life on both devices. When it comes to sending the message, I'm going to stick to the preset messages that Garmin has on there. It's 3 basic messages. I'm starting my hike, everything's okay, and I'm done with my hike. Kind of boring, but it gets the point across, and it doesn't require having any special connections to do it. Step number 2 is timing and location of sending your messages. Now, this is huge. If you are deep in a forest or in a ravine and you don't have a clear line of sight to the sky, don't try and force a message out, because all it's going to do is fail and resend, and be a huge draw on your battery. Take a few more minutes, hike out to a bluff or a ravine, or if you're by a river, come down to the river where you know you can get a good line of sight to the sky. That's going to guarantee a better and more effective communication when you're sending that message out, and it's going to reduce the number of attempts that your Garmin has to do to successfully send a message. The third thing that you can do is changing your tracking intervals. Now, Garmin automatically defaults to a 10-minute tracking. That means every 10 minutes, it's sending a little ping with its GPS signal to save your location. That way, in the event of an emergency, it's got a better idea of where you're at. Now, if you're in an area where you know it's not going to be able to get a good signal to get a good tracking method, you can try extending that out to 30 or 60 minutes. Now, this is completely at your own comfort level, but if you find that you're in an area where you know it's not going to work, try extending that out just for a little bit longer, and it'll help save some of the battery life. It won't be a big significant savings, but every little bit helps. Tip number 4, change your logging mode. Now, if you are tracking your hikes so that you can go back and look at the detail later on, there's 2 different settings. You can do a standard tracking, or you can do a high definition tracking. Now, obviously, high definition tracking is much better for looking back on it, but if you're like me, you're probably also using an app like Onyx or AllTrails to track your hike. Rely on that instead, and then let your Garmin be on a standard tracking mode, and it's going to use less data. Less data means less energy. Less energy means battery conservation. Now, tip number 5 is a little more extreme, and I would only recommend this if you're in an area or a situation where you feel completely safe doing so. But if you find yourself with a long stretch of time where you're not going to be hiking, moving, or worried about communication, like say you're sleeping in your tent, or you're sitting around the campfire in the evening after you've set up and you finished your hike, you might consider actually powering down your Mini. Now, I don't mean just letting it go into a hibernating mode, but I mean completely shutting it off to save battery. If you think about it, we on average spend 10 hours a day at our campsite. That is 10 potential hours of battery savings if you shut things off. Now again, this is completely based on your comfort level, and I would only condone doing so if you know you're in a situation where it's safe to do so. But moving forward for me, when I am camped out at night, I'm going to shut my Garmin completely down, knowing that I'm going to have that extra battery the next day. It's going to be a huge savings when it comes to power, and again, as long as I feel safe doing so, there's no harm in it. I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that these safety communicators are amazing tools, but they are tools. They're tools that require some training, a little bit of knowledge, and they certainly use some battery. So if we are strategic about how we utilize these tools mostly by removing your Bluetooth communication, getting rid of that digital handshake, and being a little more strategic about where and when we send our messages. We can get up to those multi-day battery levels that all the websites brag about achieving. I've been running a test right now, and I am at 12% again, ironically. And it's been going for 82 hours. So that is a significant improvement on where I was at on my last hike. And all I've done so far is remove the Bluetooth, change my tracking intervals to 60 minutes, and I'm not sending any messages. Huge increased improvement, and I know you can achieve those numbers as well. Now, before you accuse me of making a Garmin sales pitch, let me remind you again, I am not sponsored by Garmin. No one sent me this to try it out. I purchased this myself about 1.5 years ago, and I love it. But it's also not the only device that's out there. There are a lot of different options for hikers and backpackers these days, including the satellite features on some of our cell phones. But those aren't as reliable as we like to think they are. Whatever you choose, I highly recommend you purchase a satellite communicator and make it part of your daily backpacking kit. Now, I have left some links down in the description, and yes, full disclosure, they are affiliate links to Amazon, so I do get a couple of pennies if you decide to purchase something. Even if you don't buy anything, what I would highly recommend is go to those links, take a look at the specs on what the different communicators are, and familiarize yourself with what you can and can't do for them. I highly recommend everybody have one of these in their toolkit. It is a fantastic thing to have, as long as we know how to use it. And remember, folks, at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. And that is to get outside, have an amazing adventure, and be safe while we're doing it. That's it for me today, folks. Hope to see you out there on the trail soon. Let's go for a walk.